With that being said, we'll transition into my talk, which is on sustainability and design. What can you even do? A lot of people think that you need to quit your job, go work for a climate job, or start an agency, but I don't think you have to. I think everyone can work on climate, and I'll talk more about that later. Who am I? I might know most of you, some of you from this organization as a co-founder of IxDA Indy's local chapter. Might also know you from Indy Design Week, which I also co-founded. If not, I'm just around. I've been in design for over 10 years now, which is wild to say and think of. And what really brought me into the field of design was the opportunity to make an exponential positive impact in the lived lives of people. I really care about people. That's why I'm an organizer. That's why I bring people together, is because it's all about us. It's about community and connections. So I currently work at Kroger. I'm a senior product and service designer at Kroger. I work in supply chain, manufacturing, finance, and accounting in Kroger Technology and Digital, which is the longest title ever. And I work, there's more. My teams work on reducing single-use waste for e-com, focusing on pickup. So that means if you place an order online and you go pick it up at Kroger, I've had a part in that. And what we're doing to reduce waste in the e-com process is focusing on, what that physical product is. So we have single-use labels that are printed per order to fulfill that order, to get you what you ordered. Well, that's just trash. It's single-use. It's waste. So one of my big projects out to go into beta next week, which is really exciting. That has been, how can we eliminate that, and what role does technology play when we have a physical process that we now have to change the entire thing? Similarly, how can we eliminate plastic bags, single-use plastic bags? This is huge. Legislation is coming, and Kroger has a commitment to eliminating single-use plastic bags by 2025. My team's role is to explore the opportunities and solutions to support that initiative, which is really exciting. And that's kind of what launched me into my sustainability journey. Before that, we had a themed year of sustainability with Indy Design Week. And that's how I met Torsten Jonas. I now volunteer for the Sustainable UX Network, which he co-founded. He started the Sustainable UX Manifesto. But it was really this job that launched me into it. And then I learned so much more. I also volunteer with Climate Action Tech, which I recommend that all of you check out. And I have links in the slides later. And at Kroger, as an organizer does, I co-founded the Environmental Employee Resource Group, called ECO, which stands for Environmentally Conscious Outcomes. And we're working to nourish a culture of sustainability within the daily working lives of our employees. There is a Zero Hunger, Zero Waste initiative, which is massive in terms of recovering millions of pounds of food waste annually, through the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation that Kroger runs. But that mission, there's a disconnect between that mission and then what everyone else does on a day-to-day basis. If you're in the corporate office or working outside of the store itself, it's really hard to engage in that mission or think about how can I make a difference for Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. So we're working on bringing that home. Aside from that, I was at SEP, which some folks are here from SEP. You can talk to them later. They're great people working, and we worked on a lot of things together. And I also worked at Blackbaud for a short stint on a software supporting corporate social responsibility. I say all of that because it's like, I've been in design. I really care about what we're doing and I want to share as well. I'm a mom, I'm a 6 a.m. yogi, and I'm an acrobat, I'm a hiker, and I'm generally like enthusiastic about life. So I do think that we can all be better humans, and I believe in the power of good design, good research, and good people. But unfortunately, we've got an issue, y'all. like things are not good out there. We're seeing more and more climate related disasters, and like we're seeing disruptions in the supply chain. We're seeing disruptions on agricultural, like just ability to farm wine. Like, you know, Burgundy, the south of France, like they can't really like grow wine there much anymore because it's too hot. It's not sustainable in that region, and they're having to move the vineyards north because they're dying. This is happening exponentially at scale, and collectively on a global scale, we need to have, meaning reduce by 50% our carbon emissions at large by 2030. And that is 6.5 years away. Like a little over 6.5 years away, we have to like have it. And we're not really on track to do that. The state of affairs, if you're not familiar with the planetary boundaries, you can go to stockholmresilience.org and get acquainted with the planetary boundaries. These are science-based. I am no expert in this at all, but I can tell you, I can see this is like the safe zone. It's green. That means these are the boundaries that we can safely operate within these parameters of these finite resources needed to sustain life on the one planet that we live on. And most of them are off the charts, right? Like most of them are like in these like red, really scary zones. That includes water. That includes all of the plastics that we're creating, all of that single-use trash. And unfortunately, as single consumers, it's really challenging because we don't have good options. We don't have good convenient options either. I was guilty of it myself tonight. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I'm not a hypocrite because I brought snacks in plastic platters that I'm going to recycle. Well, recycling doesn't cut it because it's effectively trash. There's more emissions needed to repurpose and recover that material. So anyway, it's kind of sad and overwhelming, and there's gonna be more of this, but I swear we're gonna end on like a happy note. But kind of we need to like understand the gravity of the situation. If we're going to have our global emissions by 2030, the John Doerr, I think I might be mispronouncing his name, but he wrote the book on objective key results, and that is how major organizations accomplish major initiatives successfully and on time. Typically, we'll talk about that later, but it was a different time. But he wrote the book on OKRs, and he was like, the climate's a pretty big deal. It's a big issue as well. So he wrote, with some others, speed and scale, and he identified 10 initiatives that we need to focus on and drive action towards in order to reach net zero by 2050. And if you go to the website, which I recommend that you do, and he has a book, there's an audio book as well. It's all really great content. But there's several of, like any good objective key result, there's several key results underneath these objectives. And we are off course for all of them, like almost all of them. So we have a lot to do collectively in order to drive action in the areas that matter most. I'm going to assume that we're all digital citizens, right? We all use technology in our daily lives based on where we live and the jobs we hold. I'm also gonna go out on a limb and say that we're all technologists, like we work in technology or aspire to work in technology. And newsflash, our industry, digital is physical. Digital has a physical footprint, and therefore it has a physical effect on the environment as well. And our emissions as an industry equate that of the airline industry. Think about that. The airline industry, with these massive planes flying around, spewing carbon into the atmosphere, which I fly on planes. I'm not going to say don't fly on planes. I try to drive when I can, you know, or ride a bike or walk. But there's a necessity to modern life, right? But the airline industry emits as much carbon as the technology industry. Pretty wild. And it's going to double, meaning the airline industry is probably not going to double in terms of their emissions, but we are, and because of the acceleration of digitization, which has a positive. Digitizing physical processes, remote meetings, remote collaboration, remote work is significantly less impactful to the environment than having people commute and go to work, hands down, point blank. If you're an environmentally forward company, you'll accept at least hybrid work. That's a bold statement. I should also state that all of everything I'm saying, all of these thoughts and opinions are my own and should not reflect on my employer at all. They're all Poppe Guthrie. All right. So you're like, yeah, Poppe, that was like really depressing. The world's on fire. Like, you're telling me, like, just by living, I'm making harm, right? Like, what can I do? Well, that's why we're here, to tell you, like, what can you do? Because you can do a lot as an individual person. Recycling is not enough. It's unfair to place the responsibility of saving the environment and the world and industry on individual consumers. That is not fair. We need better products and services. We need better infrastructure. We need better systems so that we can make better choices and have better accessibility to more sustainable options so that we can live more sustainably and take care of the world for the future. Like for us now, if we work on environment, we're working on people. We're working for people. So, like I said, we need collective action to drive better products and services and to build better systems. So if you're in here and you're a designer, I'm speaking to you. You are a designer. You craft, study, and advocate for good design. Good design should do no harm. If you're doing good design, you will do no harm. It's a code of ethics. If you're a product manager, you craft, study, and advocate for good products and a good process. Good products should do no harm, right? Like if it's a good product, it should do no harm. And you are a person who exists within groups and systems. And you can drive towards collective action because it's the only way to reach net zero by 2050. Every single individual has agency in some area of your life. Find where that area is and use it. You have influence and agency. This is Torsten Jonas. I mentioned him earlier. He's a wonderful human, and he's doing so much to drive this movement, to build this movement. And you can stay up to date by going to the sustainableUXnetwork.com. There's a Slack group, there's a community, and I do write the monthly newsletter aggregating all the good things happening globally for your information. He says that user-centered design is harming the planet. It's harming users. We are not doing good in the world through doing user-centered design. We're missing the larger context. We're missing the larger systemic context. We need to move from a human-centered process to a humanity and environmental-centered design approach. If we focus on humanity and the environment, we can make better action, we can make better products and services for our users, right? But for humanity and for the world. There's also the Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 SDGs, as they're known colloquially. You know, corporations really like acronyms. But there's 17 of these, and this seems like a lot. Yeah, it's a lot, because these are all the things we need to move forward on in order to make a better world, to make a sustainable, modern life, and to make the world better for all. It does seem like a lot, but I'm not telling you to work on all of these. That's also not sustainable. That's also not sustainable. Find one little square, find one little spot, make movement and progress towards that, and you're doing your part. If you are able to find one spot, find a niche, make progress towards that, relating it to the Sustainable Development Goals, understanding how it affects humanity and the global systems, the environmental systems within which you're operating, you're doing your part and you're working on climate and working towards making a better impact. Pearson Education is also saying they're taking a stand, coming out with a new design education book and curriculum, an entire curriculum to teach design to the youth and our future employers, or our future workforce. And they are incorporating sustainability as a cornerstone into the design process and the education framework. You can learn more by going to this link here. You can go to Pearson. I have all of the resources here. And this is the illustrator. I wanted to make sure I credited her. She worked on all these beautiful illustrations and distilling the complex information. You'll notice that there's the planetary boundaries, there's the economy, the biosphere, the society, climate action. And then here's, and these are all the actual planetary boundaries, if you weren't aware of that. This is what we're currently doing, a linear economy. We take, we make, and we waste. A circular economy means we use, we design, we make, and kind of like circular into that. But where we need to get is a regenerative economy. A regenerative design allows us to, it's a natural system. The nature doesn't waste anything. Everything is repurposed and reused. And we need to build that into our practices, into our business, into our design process, so that we can save the planet. Oh, actually, I didn't want to get here first. I meant to have, oh, well, we'll have it here. I'll just go here. Giving it away. You might be thinking, as a designer, as a product manager, yeah, Poppe, the world's on fire. I have all these great design ideas to make an impact towards that. But how am I going to sell it to my business partners? They think I'm a crazy designer anyway. I've got all these wild ideas and they're not viable. Well, I've had success with this because sustainability is good business. If you're creating less waste, then you're saving money. You can have a sustainable business and still generate revenue for your shareholders. It's doable, it's possible, and it's essential. So here's some other ways. Sustainability is good business because in the short term, like I said, you're saving the business money. If you are eliminating waste along your product life cycle, your service design life cycle, if you're eliminating physical waste, that's capital resources you're not spending. If you're eliminating labor waste, that's labor you're not spending money on. If you're eliminating energy waste, again, you're not paying for those resources that you were using along your cycle. So in the short term, so doing sustainable practices by eliminating waste will save your company money. If you build circularity and regenerative principles into your service system, your product system, you are going to cash in on that investment. There's a return on investment in circularity and regenerative design. It does take an investment up front. Think of it like your 401k. It's slow build, but what happens exponentially over time? You have growth, you have exponential growth and exponential returns. Same practices apply to circular and regenerative design. The inverse is also true, and we're seeing the effects of that now. If we don't invest in these principles now, we will see an exponential increase in disaster and crisis. So, building sustainability into your business practice and your design practice will future-proof your business. It future-proofs you. I've already told you, the new kids on the block, they're learning sustainability as a part of their design process. So not only do we need to do it for business to future-proof that, we need to future-proof our careers, because we need to lead the movement so they don't kick us out, basically, right? But there's soon not going to be an option. The EU, the European Union, is making a lot of strides towards this, towards regulation. They already have single-use plastic bag bans in use in legislation. Those are coming in the United States, which and that's spurring action. But beyond that, we're going to have legislation around stricter carbon emissions, and you might not be able to do business in the future, or have to recover and pivot quickly, which can be costly. It's more costly to do it later than it is to do it now, right? Things are just going to get more expensive. So if you can pivot now and focus on more sustainable practices, you can future-proof your business. Not perfectly, right? Like nothing is certain, but I also had that as no other viable options, right? Because consumers are also going to demand more sustainable practices of our businesses as well. Employees are going to demand their companies that they work within to be more sustainable as well. So the pressure is coming all around. And this is the plea, this is like a call to action for everyone in this room, everyone online, anyone listening to this talk. This is a call to action to take a stand. Evaluate your user journeys. This is something you can do right now. You have user journeys, you have workflows. Look at them, look across those journeys, or those blueprints, or those models, whatever you're looking at. Consider where you are generating waste. Where can you reduce waste along your process? Where can you insert circularity? Where can you recover some materials? If you are digitizing a previously physical process, what's the end of life for those physical items that you're replacing? Consider that as well. You can support sustainable choices through behavior design. We all consider, or should consider, behavior design as designers, as digital designers. You can propose more sustainable choices to your users using your products and services, and nudge them along to help them make more sustainable choices. You can also inform them of more sustainable activities. Data is insight. Data is also costly, right? Data is also costly. Dark mode costs less than everything else. It's much more energy efficient to have dark mode than light mode, because those lights are super bright, right? There's a lot of energy going into that. Also, your images. I am like a sucker for super snazzy websites, super snazzy images, and high resolution, but that also costs a lot at scale. If you have hundreds of thousands of people accessing your site, or even thousands of people accessing your site or more, and they're all loading those images at the same time at scale, that is a big carbon emission sink. So you can offer different solutions. Like maybe you could test it out, do a hackathon. Maybe a hackathon could be a good idea to try to offer a sustainable version of your site to consumers or to your users, and see, do they click it? How much does that reduce your waste? There are so many, also consider lazy loading. That can save on energy use. If you're not loading as much when they land on the page, then they're using less. And a lot of these things are just good development principles, right? Good design principles and practice. But all of that data that you're storing also has a cost. And I'm not talking about all of the other things with technology that can be done to help make an impact. So lighten your load. Some other practices and methods that you need to consider. I'm certain you at least have a persona in mind when you're designing. Consider the planet as a persona. Consider the planet as a stakeholder. Consider your local environment, your local business, animals. You can consider systems themselves as stakeholders, as personas. These are called non-human user personas. Damian Lutz writes about this and has examples that I've linked here, and they're great. And they're super helpful to reframe and rethink what you're doing so that you can do it better, right? Systemic design is also so much more important because with our user-centered design process, we tend to focus on our locus, right? We're focusing in our little frame, but that sits within a context, across a context, within another context, and there are cascading effects. So we need to understand the implications on a different scale than we've been considering them to date. So systemic design, getting familiar with circular loops, and that kind of process to understand the power forces at play within systems and how you can affect systems is really important moving forward as a design practice. And advocate and educate. As UX designers, as digital designers or product managers, you're in a position of influence and you're telling, like you're sharing your concepts as well. It's important to pitch them in a way that supports your message, right? You need it to be received well. You also will need to educate along the way because it's not common knowledge that, I mean, it's becoming common knowledge, but we still have to bring people along. And so finding the different ways that we can educate and advocate are really important moving forward. There's also this Sustainable UX Design Toolkit that goes through the SDGs, and it helps you do a workshop around exploring different concepts and ideas related to your practice or your area with the SDGs. So check that out. You can also join or start a green team, right? It will help with internal policy because beyond your products and services, like you need to build friends, right? Like this work, doing this can be taxing, it can be energy consuming, it can be depressing, right? Like this is filled with despair. So you need people to surround you with, have a support system. So joining a green team, starting a green team if there isn't one is a really good practice in order to help make change. Something else you can do. Move forward. Okay. So that was a lot, right? You have to remember that you can't do it. You don't climb a mountain all at once. You don't grow a tree. The next day, it's not 20 feet tall. Small incremental steps forward are progress. Collectively, we can all make an impact. We all work somewhere. If like, well, we might not all work, but we want to work somewhere. You're working on something and making progress towards that, right? So we all work in a system. It goes back to, if we all use our agency and the power that we have, you can make an impact. What's not so well understood is like behind all of the corporate social responsibility goals that you see out there, the ESGs, environmental, social, and governance, right? Big hot topic. Behind every single one of those is like a handful of people at large corporations advocating and pushing these along, and that can be you, right? So use your agency, use your influence, and Torsten also says that 80% of waste is designed, like it's like thought of and created in the design phase. So we have a huge impact at the point of in the discovery. Sustainability is good business. We've talked about this, but you will still have to advocate for sustainable solutions, even when your business partners are on board, because they're considering the bottom line. And you, as an environmental advocate now, you're all informed, you have the information to go forth. Please educate yourself more also. but like, you're going to have to advocate for the more sustainable solutions that aren't just the cheapest solutions. And leverage your existing toolkit to think about that waste reduction, circularity, sustainable behavior, and those systemic implications. You can join a Start a Green team. And there are so many other things within the technological infrastructure and engineering that I did not cover today. There's a lot of work that you can find in the climate action tech community, through the Green Web Foundation, through Adora Foundation. There are a lot of resources out there on how to do the engineering side more sustainably and the technological infrastructure more sustainably, but I haven't covered any of that really here. Just talking to my designers and product managers. So here are all the resources. These are actually not all of the resources that I mentioned in the talk. I'm going to share the slides and all of the links are there, but I do recommend this training that I'm currently in. It's Product for Net Zero, and it's actually pretty affordable. They've had success in the EU. They're just now starting to expand in North America, and they'll have a new cohort soon. So I recommend that. Look at Project Drawdown. Get more familiar with Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, because most of the impact is happening within Scope 3 emissions, but most of the initiatives and goals are in Scope 1. So we have a disconnect, and we're not going to reach net zero focusing on that. I mentioned Climate Action Tech, the Sustainable UX Network, the Future of Design Education. There's also the Climate Designers Resource Guide. There's a lot of information within climate designers. They also have meetups and groups if you want to get more involved with them. You can. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has the Circular Design Guide, and they put out a lot of good content regularly through Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I would tune into them. I also didn't include Design for the Planet because they tend to focus more on architecture and physical industrial product design, but Design for the Planet also has some really great things. I didn't link them here, but I just wanted to mention them. Microsoft is paving the way with some green design principles, and I don't want to speak on that, but yes, they are doing some great work here. And one of the key organizers for Climate Action Tech is actually the founder of their green team and worked on these principles. So it just kind of shows you like how small this world actually is and how we need for people to get involved from the design side. Jerry McGovern has a lot. He wrote Top Tasks, if you're familiar with that. He's also transitioned his focus into sustainability and the green World Wide Web. I mentioned the Green Web Foundation. This actually, future.io, this is more for like CEOs, so you might be interested in this course. It's pretty affordable. They also have executive leadership retreats on sustainability, but I found this course, their online course on sustainability leadership, really helpful to giving me more of the conversational but like support, you know what I'm trying to say. Gave me a lot of good things to talk about to help convince my business partners of why these things are good decisions. How to speak the language. And then the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, I have talked a lot, and now this is the time for questions. I cannot guarantee I have all the answers, but I might be able to point you in the right direction. But I would love this discussion. Yeah.
So this is a question specifically related to your own experience at Kroger. And you need to speak when corporate parent catalog, but obviously you kind involved with TikTok, systems, kind of ad program. And so I guess I'm kind of curious to know what that experience has been like, what the reception has been like, especially when you're thinking of, I guess the stereotypical image of corporate America being very concerned about, the bottom line, revenue, pleasing shareholders. Was it well received? Is it sort of like top down or bottom up? Both these things. Yeah, anything related to that.
Okay. So for those online, the question was, what is my experience been with promoting sustainable practices within Kroger? So what has that reception been within the corporate and the whole echelon, the business partners, things. I would say like design, like the design group, the design group is so receptive, right? Like designers typically want to save the world. We get into design because like there's something that's like, I can do things for people, right? So I've had so much wonderful support from my immediate manager, from my grand boss, from my great grand boss, like, and in the court and within my division, there's a lot of support. Moving beyond that, it becomes more mixed. There are people that are energized and people that care. But it is still a business. So that is why I share with you if you have one takeaway, is like, talk about how sustainability is good business. How can you talk their language to help them understand how you're impacting the bottom line and why the investment matters or why the pivot matters. Because I mean, it's just there's all types of people and ages and backgrounds and experiences. So that would be what I can say about that, is that the reception has been good. It's been positive. We're making movement as it relates to supporting the business practices as well. And the resource group is helping to tackle another arm of that by showing how we can drive business outcomes as well. That's been an initiative. So we are very fortunate to gain some funding from the corporation to run the organization internally and help that way. So yes, the reception is mixed, but overall positive. And it just takes perseverance and grit. Doing this kind of work, you have to know where you're placing your flag, know the values. Like, so if a business partner will say, you're trying to do something that's reusable, and you say, we need to incorporate a reusable thing where this one thing was just trash. And then they say, why don't we do something that can be recycled? That is an education moment of how recycling is just trash. Right? It's like, that actually is still the same thing that we're talking about. It's still the waste. So yeah, hope that answered the question.
Hey, Poppy.
Yes.
I got a question from Shane. It says, similar to this question, I'd be curious to hear a success story, quick case study from the environmental resource group, if one comes to mind. And then he popped up later with, I'd be curious to hear more examples of sustainable options, choices in e-commerce.
Again, I'm going to point to Damian Lutz. He has some examples on sustainable e-com choices. Airlines, I forget which airlines do this, but there's some that show you your emissions. Like I think even the Google Flight Tracker will show you your emissions so that you can choose a less dirty flight, if you will. And then there are things that I mean, it's still kind of a new world, like a lot, like this movement is really just building because we're like almost at the edge. So not a whole, there aren't a whole lot of examples. A lot of them tend to be in the EU. And I will link to Torsten's talk from Push conference, which is in Germany, where he talks about sustainable UX, and he has a lot of really good examples there. So I would highly recommend you watch that free talk and tune in to just follow him, right? Like he's saying good stuff. In terms of success stories with the resource group, we just got started. So like 2023, we've got funding, and like we have like so we're at the end of February. I would say that in and of itself is the success story, is that we have it, and we're already up to 92 members. Which in a corporation of 500,000, like, is actually not that much, but to have 91 people in 2 months, I would say shows that there's interest. And we're doing a lot to work within the corporate brands. So like with Simple Truth and actually mostly just Simple Truth. And then there's a company called TerraCycle that we also work with, that we're just bringing more of these stories to light. And something else I would say a success is the education that's happening, is the awareness that's happening. I just saw sustainability on somebody's OKRs, right? Like, and these are like corporate OKRs that get shared across like the entire organization. And they're like, okay, that's a success. Somebody is holding themselves accountable to making more sustainable services. Great. But beyond that, I would say stay tuned. And there's only so much I can also share publicly. But something else is the director of technology for Starbucks is going to be speaking, and I think I can make that publicly available at some point. So he's going to be speaking to our resource group at Kroger about the work that they've been doing at Starbucks for their green technology. His name's Drew Ingleson. Be wrong. But I'll also share it. He has another talk that's available online. I can share that. Yep.
So I have 2 questions actually. So it really bothered me when you said that, and it's not it's the fact that bothers me, is the fact that like it's like 3.7% that like tech like emissions have. Do you know if there's any like project or anything happening to fix that? So like, is there any like, technology that we're trying to figure out to like maybe make this like more sustainable thing? So like when we have our, where we have our hard drives and everything, where everything's stored, it's actually kind of recycling maybe itself and still makes
yes. To answer your question, yes, there are more sustainable infrastructure choices you can make. You can have renewable server farms, like you can like host your site on a renewable energy supplied server. There are also carbon removal servers. You can also have carbon removal email services. There's a company called emails.eco. They're out of New Zealand, and they will verify your emails and also remove the carbon that it creates on generation for you. So carbon removal is different than a carbon offset. So a carbon offset is where you're planting trees to recover the carbon created. We can't plant our way out of this crisis. And carbon offsets are still important, but not as impactful as we think they are. So carbon removal actually is a chemical process to remove the carbon from the environment as it's created. So there are things like that. There do you know of any other, Rob? Like more sustainable like development resources? Yeah. I would look at the Green Web Foundation. Like what I'm trying to say is like, yes, there are technologies in place. However, there are still the other technologies in place. So it takes you purchasing or doing business with these other alternatives. So you have to be aware. So this is also why it's harder, because you have to you have to be aware of them. Right? You have to like actually seek out the information because they're not the most promoted either. Like it costs more money to do business sustainably upfront because we're waiting on more returns long term.